Hello.
Okay, guys, a little ACDC. I'm going to be working on an intro for
Yep.
the James and Pedro show, but yeah, there's some changes coming our way on 2022. So happy New Year to everybody. This is the
Yep.
James and Pedro show. Yeah.
Happy New Year's, everybody. Thanks for coming by. We got episode 21. Episode 21, yes, of 2022, the first episode of 2022. We have a really interesting creator here with us today. Max Said is the Twitter handle. I'm
Yo,
sorry, Max, if I forgot your last name already. It's been
you're
an
good.
early morning. But thanks for joining us, buddy.
Yeah,
Do
of course.
appreciate you
Thanks for
coming
having
by.
me. I really appreciate being on.
Yeah. So, how you doing? How was your New Year's? Did you hang out with some family? What'd you guys do?
New Year's, everything in the last year for me has been super slow. I had a kid in
Oh,
January.
Wow.
His one year birthday's coming up. So I
congrats,
spent
man.
Christmas home. I spent New Year's home. I spent everything home for the last year because he's
Congrats, bro.
super tiny. Thank you, thank you.
You enjoying being a dad? You like it?
It's great. I think there's like a lot of apprehension these days toward being a parent.
Mhm.
And I definitely had that in my early 20s. And like, I'm 30 now and I love having a kid. Like it's been the biggest, best turn in my life. So I'd recommend it, but obviously not for everybody.
There you
Yeah,
go.
I mean,
Wholesome. Very wholesome way to start the show. I like
yeah,
it.
that's awesome. Yeah, because I want to say, like, there's people who shouldn't have kids, and you know them just by looking at them. Like, dude, like,
Well,
I
and
just,
a lot of time they know too.
yeah.
And so I don't try, like, if somebody tells me they don't want to have kids, I don't put it on them.
Hmm.
But like, having a kid and working on the book over the last year are pretty
Mhm.
intertwined. And, in terms of, you see a lot of people, creative people especially, who their output and their outlook change as soon as they have a kid. And
Mhm.
so for me, like, it was super generative, even from a creative standpoint, just to like have that change in mindset.
Awesome. Yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
one of the things. Like you can't really. I'm sorry. Like we can close this. We can go on over the book with that. This is something I feel like needs to be said. Like you can't afford to be a nihilist when you have a kid, and
Yeah,
that would inform how people write. Like
yeah.
so it's a really good point.
Well, and when we get into talking about it, like,
Hmm.
in like talking about it heavy, Neonseed, it really is a book that was sort of started to be created when people thought the world was ending, and
Mhm.
Hmm.
continued to be worked on when people still thought the world was ending. And
Mm.
um, you know, it's when we live in a world that always feels like it's ending. Like if you can go to any time period in history and somebody will
Hmm.
tell you the world is ending,
Yeah.
being nihilistic is probably not a good route.
Hmm.
Um, but
Yeah. I know what you mean.
that's just something I kind of came to through all this
Yeah.
too.
Hmm.
Yeah. Like I agree, honestly. And it sounds I don't have a kid, but it's definitely I'm 29, I think. Now I'm turning 30 next year. My I think my point of view is certainly kind of went along the path you've followed there. At least what you've said here. I used to sort of scoff at the idea of having kids. Now I know I will definitely have kids at some point. It's something that I look forward to. And it's nice to hear somebody say that being a dad has, been a really great change in their life. Um,
It's definitely a challenge, but like I believe me, if you lean
Also
into
the
it, you'll love
nihilism,
it.
though.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
like, this is coming from somebody who I wouldn't say like I was a hardcore nihilist, but
Mhm.
I born in 1991. You know,
Mm.
not like I can mark the different ends of the world I've already experienced. Like 9/11 was a kind of end of the world. The release of the first iPhone was a kind of the end of the world.
Mm. Yeah.
Um,
Y2K.
yeah, I mean, people make this pop eschatology stuff, and it
Hmm.
it births conspiracy theories, it births political theories, but all of it comes from this overcast paranoia that we all have, that things are changing and coming to an end all the time.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, and I mean, becoming a
Yes.
parent is kind of an end of the world. Like it is, it totally. My childhood is over. All
Yeah.
sense of youth is over. Like
Hmm.
I'm
Mm.
now. I instantly in this year became an old man.
Old man Max.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I
No
didn't need
shit.
I didn't need a kid to feel old. Like I've been feeling old since I'm 21. But,
Fair, very fair.
yeah.
So Max, let's kind of start off with, let's get back to your childhood. Actually, it's a good segue.
Yeah.
What kind of stuff were you into as far as media goes growing up? You said you were born in '91, so you probably had the good stuff, as I like to call it. I was born in '92 myself, so.
Yeah. It's interesting because like what qualifies as the good stuff will vary from person to person. And like the 90s were obviously a great time for growing up with comics, with animated television series of like the X-Men animated series, the
Hmm.
Batman animated Supermans, all that stuff was on TV.
Mhm.
And of course, like I watched all of that. And what I think is interesting, maybe between like somebody who would have been born in like 81 versus 91, is we had this dynamic of you had anime starting to be localized, not just smuggled and bootlegged from places, but
Yeah.
like you had Toonami, you had the internet for the first time where you could actually like torrent fan subs of stuff that wasn't localized. Viz Media was starting to put manga in Barnes and Noble and Borders
Mhm.
when it was still a thing. And so, for me, like you can even see behind me, I had a subscription to Shonen Jump from like 2003 until 2006 or whenever, and they folded sometime after that in America.
Mhm.
But like I grew up on, manga and anime being in the mix with superheroes and comics and American
Hmm.
stuff. And I, am from this kind of cohort of people that we don't see much difference between somebody like Goku and Superman. Or we don't see much difference between, Naruto and One Piece and the Avengers and Spider-Man or something like that. So
Mhm.
there's this you know, as a kid, like I was in this space where I wanted to tell stories. All kids have stories to tell and they're looking for a way to tell them. But we weren't quite there yet with small little phones that you could shoot videos on, or, I
Yeah.
think my first video camera, I think used DV tape.
Mm.
Like my first one I bought for myself used these mini DV, looked like little tiny VCR cartridges. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
you could transfer that to a computer and you could upload that to YouTube, but like why? um we were kind of talking about the era where like Bo Burnham got big because he uploaded a video for his brother to see and other people
Hmm.
saw it.
Yeah.
So it was this interesting period where if you wanted manga and anime you were probably stealing it. If you
Mhm.
wanted comics and stuff like that you were probably borrowing them from older people. And this sort of this torrent of new media is what like captured my imagination and pushed me toward being like, okay, I want to be a writer. And
Mhm.
this started super super early for me. Like in fourth grade I was writing about like ninjas using spell scrolls, and
Nice.
guys with like magic briefcases and
Yeah.
just crazy stories that were coming from the East. Like,
Hmm.
and it, you got a lot of encouragement, I think, as an American kid, sort of trying to emulate some of this stuff. Cause even the adults were like, where is this coming from? I haven't
Yeah.
seen anything like this.
So okay,
Yeah.
you brought up very interesting point. So the scarcity and the rarity uh, getting anime in the 90s.
Oh
Because I
yeah.
mean, I'm from a different part of the world, and to us, it was very difficult to get comics, but anime was everywhere.
Yeah. And see
And
that actually
mhm,
makes sense to me because,
mhm,
a lot of the bootleg stuff from the mid 80s came up to the United States from South America.
yeah,
And there's
hmm,
this long history of relations between Japan and places like Brazil
in Chile.
yeah, and
Mhm.
I mean they sent, literally sent people, I think in the
Hmm.
70s and the 80s, to places like Brazil.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and then they ended up going back and forth, and
Yeah.
there's this big cultural exchange between South America and
Hmm.
the East that people really don't understand.
Hmm.
And that's why, like, I'm when I work with my team, one of our, my producer, Harlem, he's Brazilian, and he's into all this old stuff that I'm into, but he was born 10 years after I was. And
Hmm.
that's just because his dad had the Cyberpunk collection VHS to give him,
Hmm.
and had
Yeah.
As a kid, if you're watching this like violent 80s anime, in South America, it's actually a more common experience than
Yeah.
it was in North America for sure.
I mean, I'm older than both you guys because I was born in '74, and I would turn on the TV like in 1981, and I would see like Captain Harlock and Grandizer and just like this mech anime where people are like exploding like blood all over the cockpit, and I'm like 10 years old, like yeah, kill him again, it's. And that is something that to me say like, okay, here's a Superman comic. To me, that was like the holy grail because it was really hard to get your whole own comic. So when you said like I'm drawing comic books and I'm drawing American style, you got this mystique of wow, this guy's like really going into the underground kind of stuff. So maybe I'm catching from you guys like you talk, it's the other way around in the US. Like if you're doing manga, it's like oh you're going deep now.
Yeah, well, and it's actually insanely interesting that history has kind of repeated itself that way.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the comic space now, there's this sort of prevalent anxiety about the growing manga space in the United States, and it's inevitable there's going to be an explosion of American manga, and it's also inevitable that it's going to kind of incorporate stuff you've seen from the East and you expect from the East, but with a kind of inevitable American
sensibility.
Yeah.
Right.
And I mean, that's really where Neonseed came out of, is us anticipating that this was going to happen anyway, and we're already into this, so let's just do it. Let's just be the ones to take a crack at it. And we looked at all that kind of stuff. Like our starting point was an anime that I shouldn't have seen as a young person. But I stole it, I took it from the internet, and my parents had no idea how I did that, so they didn't know I did it. But it's Genocyber. Like if you're familiar with Genocyber, it's basically banned. It's basically written out of existence, even though it's one of the more influential anime from that period, because it's so violent, and particularly because it displays violence with children. And that was like, there's this I'll kind of try to keep it on track, but there's this period of time in Japan in the 80s, like around 85, where economically a bunch of countries got together to depreciate the value of the yen against all these other currencies, and it created this space where you could get loans in Japan very easily, and video game companies and manga and animation companies exploded out of this. And that's where all that shit came from. And most people just aren't aware of this, but like there were all these foreign markets and all this money and all these things, and it's almost like people think anime just kind of always existed as it is, but the 80s was really this time where people were adventurous, dangerous, and they had the economic freedom to pursue stuff you could never approach now, other than in a completely indie space where you're not focused on money.
Like, have you seen Grave of the Fireflies? And I'm curious.
Yeah. And that one too, because it's the two kids, violence, war.
And like atomic explosions. Like it's a depressing movie. And the thing is, like, who gave the money for this, guys? Like, let's suppress the shit out of everyone with this movie, and I mean, it happened. I don't know, like that's one of the things that I'm really excited about this indie space. Because a lot of people, everybody needs to buy Spam and rice. I mean, we all need to eat. But I'm seeing a lot of experimental stories trying to get told. Like, for example, like that bric-a-brac, that Christmas story. That's something that you can sell to anyone right now. Like, that's something you have to do by yourself. The tone of your story, and I don't know if your artist is, maybe I should ask him directly, if he's influenced by Peter Chung from Ian Flux, because I'm seeing a lot of it on the on the lines.
I'll see if I can get him in touch with you guys, because I would love for you to talk with Nelson. But he's 41. He's about 10 years older than I am. And he is just he's in that vortex in Portugal of like all media sort of floats. Like he knows old movies, like Tetsuo the Iron Man is a big influence on us. All the we looked at all this stuff. We really tried to pull from everywhere possible that we could pull from that would make sense as an influence. And having a guy like him, where you look at places like Spain, Portugal, parts of Europe, all media eventually ends up there, and some stuff never gets out of there. You know, like Italian, the Italian
Fumetti.
Gallo films, the murder
Yeah.
films, and like all that cinema that
Yeah.
most Americans have never even heard of, but they've seen influences of it. He's seen
Yeah.
it. So like when I talk to him, he has 10 years on me, and he knows everything I'm talking about in great detail. So I wouldn't be surprised if he would throw some names at you that nobody else would, just because of where he's coming from in terms of who his influence is. And I mean, you're looking now at a lot of his, this is a lot of his concept work. And this was
That's
a year of concept work we had to do, because, you know, when you're trying to make an amalgamation of things that everybody already loves, but make it your own, you've got to really go after it. And you end up where sometimes things are super bolted on and they don't feel right. And you really have to dig very deep to say, you know, why is Tetsuo the Iron Man, this black and white creepy film, still so important? Why is Grave of the Fireflies still so affecting to people? Because these stories were written decades ago.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
so it's like, for I can't speak for him, but I guarantee you that guy is into some deep shit when it comes to artistic influences.
Yeah, dude. Like, no, the things that it's showing in the line quality, in the character design, in the costume design. Like, these are things that I'm an animator by trade, and I've been doing this for like around 20 years. Yeah, I'm shiny past Master Dan. That's because I wear lotion. you have to look at
gotta keep his skin smooth.
Yeah. When you guys get 40 something, lotion.
Yeah, I'll be doing the lotion routine then, because
Yeah,
I have not kept up with it in the last 30.
That black don't crack thing is bullshit. Lotion, baby. So yeah, dude. So the thing's like, okay, I was talking with James, like, it's a travesty that you've done only this in I don't know 45 days.
You know, I can see how you'd think that, but I, like, from my point of view, before all this started a year ago, I told the guys, I said, if we make $100, we made it, boys. And when we made that, when we made that $100, I was like, we're done. We're good. This is a success. And
dude.
The big reason why, though, is because like I'm not it's not lost on me that American comics and manga are not, they're like oil and water to some people right now.
You'll be surprised.
You'll
be surprised.
I probably will be soon. How that's going to change, but for a long time there was this perception of because there's you see a lot of the slice of life manga, the sort of trash pulpy stuff that is more it's direct. I mean, I'm gonna be straight with you. It's directed at like 14 and 15-year-old girls. A good chunk of it, a good chunk of it is like they have titles like I was a goblin in a fantasy land and how did I get a boyfriend? Like you go from Superman to that and it doesn't make sense, but then then somebody shows you, hey, watch some anime, watch Cowboy Bebop, watch Evangelion, watch some classics, and people start to go, oh, these are real stories. Like this is not playing around, kids. They're telling real stories here. And so part of me is like, we're an unknown quality. I know it's going to be hard to get this into people's lap. And then on top of that, we're a year out. Like this is, I mean, if you look at like here, I have this just for as an example. Like this is a copy of volume 1 of Dragon Ball. These things are thick. Like when you're making a manga, you're making 200 pages of a coherent story. And when it stands alone, you have to really beat that thing into shape, because it's not, if it was 28 pages, this thing would be coming out. It would be out already. But we just didn't want to do it that way, which is part of the reason why, like I said, we're a year into concepting, and that's, I put together all of our stuff into this book.
The art sexy.
That's system. And like this comes out late February, and it's a split book. So it's like, let me see here. The first part of the book is interviews and concept art pages.
Oh yeah.
And then the back half of the book is like this index of, I took all my story notes and I wrote out a glossary, basically, somewhat narratively, of 40, 50 years of in-lore history. So if there's, we set this campaign up basically where it's like, look, if you see the ambition of this project and you don't mind waiting a year for a big fat hardcover book. This is your
Mm.
chance. We're going to do 200 copies of this book only in hardcover. I'm never going to do it in hardcover again. When it's over, it's going on Amazon. It'll be available in paperback
Okay.
at like
Okay.
a, you know,
Hmm.
reasonable price point.
Yeah.
I
Mm.
think with like $10 digital, more than that paperback, you know. But
Hmm.
we would give this book away if Katana wasn't so talented and deserved money, or
Yeah.
Nelson, you know. And like
Yeah.
obviously I would like a cut too, but I would give my entire share to our artists just because
Hmm.
this is the amount, you understand, the amount of labor on the writing side and the drawing side of any comic book can be
Yeah.
astronomical. And this is like all of us are living our own lives, and this is a passion project
Hmm.
100%.
Yeah,
Every
but I mean,
yeah,
it's cool to make it sustainable. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And yeah, just like I mean, how you design the perks. How I know you're seeing this as an introduction, and don't believe I'm bashing you because of that. Like you're seeing this in an introduction that makes sense, but I'm telling you right now, with the level of quality this project has,
Mm.
all you need to do is start going on shows and spread the word out. Because I mean, people are gonna fall in love with projects like this. With the
Mhm.
Yeah.
amount of lore that you have, like you're already showing, like all with that lore book you showed me, I'm already intrigued. Okay, so this goes deep,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
and
people want that immersive experience. You know what I mean? And the art looks amazing. So, dude,
and
just
we've definitely talked about how like this first campaign, you know, we're putting our foot in the water, we're getting our name out there, and Nelson and I have kind of said when the time comes, we'll probably end up doing a second campaign and getting advice from people and basically doing an
yes,
omnibus.
yes,
You know,
yes, sir.
putting out, you get the book, you get
Hmm.
the art book and the lore book, and
Hmm.
you get
Hmm.
a couple of other extras, you know, we're working on.
Hmm.
And because you know, you're completely correct. Like I try not to have imposter syndrome and sell us short and say,
Hmm.
oh, you know, we're just not there yet. Like part of me lives in fear, honestly, that Nelson does finish the book and I read the book and I go, holy fuck, this is better than what I thought. Because I'm sitting here, from my position, the script is finished,
Hmm.
the lore is written out. I've done a year of work.
Very
You know,
nice.
basically like 5 people did workshop sessions for 6 months. I took all those ideas and tried to synthesize them down into a coherent plot. And
Hmm.
then, you know, Nelson and I sat together and took what I made and continue really to work on it. And it's much more of like a screenwriter, film director relationship almost than it
Hmm.
even is uh comic book. Because I don't know how, you know, I've never written a comic book of
Yeah.
this length ever. I've done screenplays, I've done prose, I've done other things. Um, but we had to come up with a workflow and a way to relate to one another.
Mhm.
And part of that is through just a visual language that's closer to film to me, honestly, than it
Yeah.
is to comics, which
Hmm.
is not, it's not necessarily, I mean, I would even recommend to people who are trying to get into comics to start thinking about it the way you think about how you plan for a film. You know, you look at like The Matrix, they storyboarded that entire film into a
Yeah.
graphic novel and sold it on that graphic novel.
Hmm.
So there's crossover for that for sure.
Yeah. The
Um,
only thing I will advise, because I mean that's one of the walls I hit, because I'm coming from film too, like animation film, storyboarding. Don't get trapped in the film frame.
yeah,
Is that's especially for storyboard artists, like they will think of that 16:9 or that like cinema 2.35 like framing. In
this,
comic books, the framing is another tool to tell the story. So sometimes you need vertical panels, sometimes you need like odd shaped panels, and that's something that to keep in mind just to get your head out outside of the cinema. I mean, there's a lot of things you share. Your
yeah.
storytelling is storytelling,
And
but
that's where I got incredibly lucky because like from a
mhm,
writer's standpoint, that's where I'm coming from.
mhm,
Um, but Katano is, or Nelson is, he's the artist, and I think
mhm,
like
Mm.
I would love for you to talk to him just in the last like 20 minutes of talking to you because I just already feel like you guys would have a lot to talk about. But he knows, man. Like
mhm. Awesome.
he's the one who basically told me, you know, do you want to write this in comic book format? Do you want to write it panel by panel? And I kind of said
Mhm,
to him, you know, hey, look, man, I'm, you know, I do motion graphics, I do design, I understand composition, but
mhm,
you're the artist. And he was brave enough to tell me basically, yeah, give me 20 pages of however you want to write it, and we'll sit down and we'll talk about it. And a lot of what you're saying is him saying, coming to me and saying, I can take this paragraph and then we can break this down to panels. And these
Mhm.
panels, that he's kind of got my back on that design. And
Awesome.
like this is where, maybe a little atypical with how many people are involved with this project. Because like I said, I think at a time it was 6 of us, and now
Mm,
people are sort of rotating in and out. Um, and it's down to kind of me and the artist.
okay.
But
That's the best actually. Like the things like I don't want to say like because some people like working teams, but
Mhm.
there's something going on with storytelling, and that's not only in the U.S. That's worldwide, which is storytelling by committee,
yeah,
and that's cool. But when was the last time you saw an ET or a Jaws?
right,
You know what I
right.
mean? Like stories need to be personal. When you get like, okay, you get a committee of people telling you, like, okay, are we involving like one-eyed midgets or whatever? Like, there's always like, dude, that's not the story I want to tell.
Yeah.
And sometimes things get lost. And I mean, it's nice to take into account like, yeah, we want to include everybody, but then the personal touch of the stories are lost,
You
and that's why we get this like disposable movies every year. Like, what was the best movie from 2018? I don't remember.
yeah, no. Well, and
The
you
new
need
Hellboy.
people yeah, oh god, no.
Oh,
You need people who are going to fight in their
hmm,
positions, even if you
yeah.
have a collaboration going. Because I'll
Hmm.
tell you, I fought with my producer Harlem over stuff that to me like seems so minuscule, but he needed it to be a part of the story.
Hmm.
And Nelson has fought with people, um less so with me. We don't necessarily fight as much as we spend hours and hours, you know, grinding down on something. But yeah, you have to have somebody who's in a role, even if you have kind of
Hmm.
a committee set up. It can't just be like if this was written by 5 people, I would not be as enthusiastic about it.
Yeah.
The
Mhm.
fact that I had pages of this in the hospital room when my kid was being born, and I'm sitting there thinking about my wife and my kid, and I've got all these characters and locations and stuff on my brain as well. And so it's like you almost need the apparatus of like one person's brain to cook certain things a certain way, and then
Hmm.
you let the group taste it and go, "Oh, this
Hmm.
tastes like shit." Go back
Yeah,
and recook
exactly.
it, or like,
Hmm.
Need some
"This is the
sub.
best meal I've ever had,"
Yeah.
But
Or say like, hey, sprinkle some paprika or whatever.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
there's other
Definitely.
level.
But no,
Yeah.
the by committee stuff, I can never even understand how you do that.
Hmm.
Like I've been in writers workshops, I've been in stuff that's more writers roomy
Hmm.
as like support, and it's just too jumbled, man. You end up with these like Frankenstein pieces,
Yeah.
and some stuff works and some stuff doesn't. And of course we've seen that because like I brought up the Matrix, and I'll even say it, like, look at the discourse on that, where there are people who are like, yeah, parts of this are acceptable, but a lot of it just feels like it was fucking bolted together.
Hmm.
Right.
And we really worked so hard to keep this from being like a hodgepodge of influences and
Yeah.
Right.
references to things.
Hmm.
And it's like, like even the what you've got on screen there with the whole transformation stuff with our main character Gene. We
Hmm.
looked at the thing, we looked at Videodrome as much as we looked
Awesome.
at Tetsuo and Akira and all these. We didn't just go to anime because
Hmm.
Right.
it's it makes sense for us as a group to not do that. Um, and I mean, like, you know, we can get into more of the plot and stuff. It's really hard because, as you'll know, like if I explain any anime at some point, I'm gonna end up spoiling the whole fucking thing. Like if I tried to
Yeah.
tell you about Evangelion, I'd
That,
get
that's one
five
of
minutes in.
that's one of the things I wanted to ask. Like, can you tell us about this story without spoiling anything?
Yeah, yeah. So the the very basic gist is that this plant was discovered, and it was very useful for a lot of things. It's kind of like I looked at stuff like graphene, which is like a new thing in engineering that they're like, oh yeah, it has
Hmm.
all these applications. It's going to be in everything eventually. And we took a lot of these ideas that people just have about things and expanded them out. And the general idea is this plant getting incorporated into consumer products and medicine and all this other stuff had this inadvertent effect of causing a disease where if you're exposed to UV, the pores of your skin start to open up until your flesh falls off. And like
Ah,
this was obviously a huge fucking problem.
wow.
And the governments of the world struggled to kind of figure out what to do about it. And everything relied on the plant to begin with. So there was really no divorcing themselves from it. So they just said, fuck it, we'll put giant domes over what metropolitan areas we can to block out the UV. Everybody else can kind of fend for themselves, bring an umbrella, I guess. And our
Wow.
story sort of kicks off in this world with this character, Gene Almeida. And he lives in an outer dome, where things are a little bit less built up. And he has this occupation of being a negotiator. So
So
people
is he
have
the?
yeah,
Sorry, sorry.
that's our gunman. Yeah, our man with the
Right
big
on.
ass gun. Um,
Righteous.
and like he what that's my baby. Gene is my contribution because he's like this really difficult amalgamation of how do you do a new male manga character? Every male
Yeah.
manga character with a trench coat and a gun has been done.
Mhm.
And he really came from kind of a love of like Hideo Kojima and
Mm-hmm.
video game stuff.
Solid.
Snatcher, you'll see in his
Yeah.
coat. Police knots, you'll kind of see in his,
Nice.
and obviously that goes back to Lethal Weapon and Blade Runner because both of those games are built off of those
Mm-hmm.
movies. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of we really wanted him to feel old and familiar to anime watchers, movie watchers, but we wanted him to be unique. And I don't want to
So,
like, yeah, go ahead.
is he more Riggs or Morta? Now that you
He's
went
more,
to.
yeah, he's more of a Riggs.
Okay. Cool.
But he's more of a Riggs if Riggs was like 40 years old and didn't
Mm-hmm.
have his Murtaugh anymore.
Okay. Cool.
So it's kind of like what if Riggs just ended up back in that trailer and never really
Mm.
resolved anything.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Awesome.
and there is elements of that where, he's estranged from his wife. Like we brought those tropes in because everybody loves those tropes.
Yeah.
Like you can shit on using tropes, but when you use them right, sometimes they're a lot of fun and they help people ease into a story.
The things like tropes and stereotypes, like they come from a source, like they don't come out of the blue.
Yeah.
So saying like, oh, you're using that's a common use trope or whatever. No, you're using the trope wrong.
Yeah. And
That's the thing.
part of it too
Is he
is
too
like,
old for this shit?
yeah. But a big part of it is, we're leaning on 80s and 90s anime, and
Awesome.
80s and 90s anime is so fun and irreverent, even when it's dirty and gritty.
Yeah.
That we kind of you had to include some classic tropes to make it complete the vibe,
Yeah.
But to like get back to what is this story about, it's really about like what we started talking about, like eschatology and the end of the world.
Mhm.
And this very much is this is a pandemic story on its face, right? Like the spread of a disease, the
Yeah.
lockdowns and isolation, the sort of successful or less successful government responses, and that just sort of got roped in because that was what was happening with the world, and we leaned into that.
I
But
like the fact that you guys made the sun the enemy. That's
yeah, that's a Kojima thing too, because he
Yeah,
had made this game Boktai where the sun, you needed to use the sun to charge up your weapons in the game.
yeah.
And so we really did want to invert a lot of Kojima's stuff just for
Mhm.
people who are maybe on the video game side more than the anime or movie side or something.
Because that's not a common trope. You know what I mean? Like, the
Yeah,
sun will kill you.
without like it being about vampires. Yeah,
Mhm.
I noticed that it wasn't as common as I thought it would be.
Mhm.
Nice.
And I do know that like in our research, we found a couple of movies here and there that had sort of similar setups, but
Mhm.
nothing, like you're saying, that is really super mainstream in that regard.
Yeah.
And we needed a body horror thing, we really wanted to see people melting in the sun and
Yeah, it wouldn't be 80s anime if it didn't have that.
yeah. But yeah, so the rest of the story really is what happens to this world and how this problem resolves itself. And in typical 80s 90s anime fashion, your third act is a complete, fucking insane ramp up from the first two.
Mm.
And I really cannot give anything away about that third act because
Hey,
it's like,
don't
yeah.
don't.
But like if you're familiar at all with anime, you know what I mean. They have a totally they don't use like the Shakespearean 5 act, 3 act
Hmm.
structure. They have a
Yeah.
4 act structure where you sort of have a very slow takeoff and then it just goes. And once it
Hmm.
goes, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
So that's sort of that's the kind of pacing you can expect
Yeah,
from this.
that's one of the things that are very interesting from Asian storytelling. That it's not our American like iambic pentameter
Yeah.
Shakespearean 3 acts and we're gone, and the hero's journey is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like I noticed because my dad's a writer, and he would be he would see me watching, for example, like my favorite anime was Captain Harlock, and he would tell me like I can root from for anyone in this story. Like everybody's an asshole here. What are you watching this? I was like, dude, I
Right.
love it. But it's not that the storytelling is different. So I don't know. Like and we were talking about the amalgamation of manga and American storytelling. I think that's what will make American manga different from manga from Japan or Asia.
Mm.
If we incorporate the Shakespearean school of storytelling with a manga aesthetic, it's going to be very unique and distinctive. Because
Yeah.
that's one of the things. Like for example, when I studied animation in 2001, and one of the many things people critique about students who wanted to do anime, being from the U.S., like go to Japan because nobody wants American anime.
Yep. Except Disney, if they can
Yeah,
take it and turn it into their own thing.
yeah. No, the thing is like I don't want to blame Disney because the things like in the beginning, Osamu Tezuka and all those guys were copying Disney, and they came
Mhm.
up with anime because they didn't have like the training to do
There
to
was there
do
was definitely a back and forth trade for
a
sure
back and forth
between,
trade.
yeah.
Yeah, but now then you get like Miyazaki who out Disney with his stories.
So much so that I mean Disney has been the chief distributor of those
Mhm.
movies
Yeah,
forever.
exactly.
Mm.
Hmm.
Because they're, that's part of Disney locking down and not wanting the competition.
Hmm.
That's I mean, that's part of the reason too why I like making the story is more concerning to me than making money off the story.
Hmm.
Because as soon as somebody recognizes that they can make money off of this story, I know I'm fucked because I'm not a business person.
But all the thing. I mean, the only way you won't get screwed with this, and I mean, I don't like like a business. I live in a farm, but keep control of your IPs. As long
Yeah.
as you control your IP, nobody can screw with you. The moment you like, okay, we're signing you up for this contract or
Mhm.
whatever, but we need X% of the IP. That's basically them lowering your pants, and
Yeah.
something's coming your way. So just keep controlling your IP. You'll be fine, man.
I definitely wanted to say though what you're saying about how Americans and the West are going to inject their own, sensibilities on top of the
Mhm.
stuff that's been laid down by the East. I think
Mhm.
that there's currently like the trend in specifically American writing, is that like people really want resolution in their
Mhm.
stories. They really
Yeah.
want their things tied up nicely. They want their character arcs to land exactly where they think they're going to land. They want something comfortable. And I
Mhm.
and I mean like I know that this, like a great example of this is definitely the Marvel, the rise of the Marvel movie universe.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
Mm.
I'm sure everybody has different opinions on what that's done to comics, but it definitely has lowered the threshold for having things that don't resolve or
Yeah.
things that are uncomfortable, which is present all over superhero comics. And I mean, you can look at like Grant Morrison and Alan Moore and other people,
Mhm.
and they love non resolutions or things that don't end the way you want them to. And that's very, very much the flavor of the East. Like
Yeah.
the way that Eastern stories resolve is often very conflicting, and their
Mhm.
audiences seem to like that. Our audiences don't, because if
No.
anything is conflicting here, people will fight over it for a week and then forget that it came out.
Yeah.
So like somehow we're gonna find a way, I think, to give people resolutions in these manga and anime style stories that are maybe not the same that they'd expect from your typical American superhero, but it's something. And we tried for that, like getting these character arcs where maybe maybe everybody's not a hero who makes it to the end. Maybe everybody doesn't do the right thing, but at least when you leave a character or you turn the last page, you say to yourself, I feel like we got somewhere good with this, with these people and with this story and this narrative. But it's going to be a tough transition.
Yeah, but the things that I think the look is going to help you in that regard, because I always use the example of No Country for Old Men. Remember that movie?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That movie is strictly American, like Southwest, like flavoring, and like desert and whatnot. Like you can tell it wasn't made in America, but the religion of that movie left everybody with a bad taste in their mouth. Because they're like, dude, this is not an American story. The bad guy got away.
Right.
And got away in a way that was freaking scary. Like I went out of the cinema looking down my back, like that motherfucker's coming. It touched me in a way not even horror films have touched me in the way of being scared of a character.
Yeah. And that's what happens though. That's why it's scary, is because in real life the bad guy does get away.
Yeah.
More often than not. And, yeah.
I do want to say this real quick, just to hop in here. Kind of to piggyback on Max's point earlier, I actually definitely agree that in America we are going to have some kind of version of an American manga explosion. There's two reasons why. The one that really kind of stands out to me is we can look at the opposite happening with My Hero Academia, which is a bunch of basically American superheroes, turned manga. And we love that shit over
here. Even One Punch Man and stuff like that. Yeah, for sure.
So I think it makes sense that we'll see it the other way eventually as well. I think it's going to take creators like you. There's a gentleman we had on about, let's say, 10 weeks ago or so, Jeremy Thibodeau, I believe is how you pronounce it.
Thibodeau. I don't even want to try to pronounce his name properly because I'm just going to screw it.
Horrible with last names. Sorry about that. But he has a really, really beautiful book called Beckoned, and it's just pure like JRPG stylings. It's very much in that flavor. So it's going to take guys like, and he's also developing an RPG for it. So yeah, it's very much in that. It's going to take guys like you and him to kind of lay the groundwork, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely it's a weird thing, right? Because it's like people's perception of how generationally like creativity functions has shrunk. Like people really think that in 10 years or something, millennials are going to do all the work that they're going to do, and then they're just going to be 40 years old and retired, and they're not going to do anything anymore. But that's like not really the case. Like if you look at the older generation, like just American comics, right? In the 50s and 60s, there was this distinct style and flavor of how to make a comic. And then by 1971, you had people who grew up reading those comics turning 30, turning 40, and they started to make things that were very, very different and and redefined what things were going to be. And I think like if 91, 2000, 2010, 2020, like these next 10 years are going to be where there's going to be people who you've never heard of. They've never had a YouTube channel. They've never had a Twitter. They've been pretty much just hiding their, biding their time for a while. And I'm not fully one of those people. Like I said, I'm kind of a background creative. I sort of jump in and help other creators out where I can, more than I make my own stuff. And like I have had YouTube channels and things, but I'm not clout oriented. And I think that that's the divide, right? Like I think that it's an old idea that you're supposed to get, even though people think it's probably really brand new, that clout matters and having clout is more important than having money even. People doing stuff for attention, the attention economy is somehow more lucrative than the actual money economy. But like for me, I think there's a growing pool of people who just don't give a shit about how many likes or shares something gets, and they're just going to make something and drop it on you. And you'll in the next 10 years, you'll probably see tons of that stuff all over, even outside this particular medium, just because, like you're saying, people are tired of the tried, old boring way of doing shit.
The committee production.
Yeah,
but the thing is, like, I mean, as creators right now, like we're living in a I mean, I don't want to call it a YouTube era because I mean, I think YouTube as a platform. I don't want to say their names or content, but I think in 5 years there's gonna be like actual competition for YouTube.
Yeah,
So right
Mm.
now, as creators, it's our responsibility to put ourselves out there, and we can choose to be part of the drama or not.
exactly.
But we have to allow people to know we're here, and it's
Exactly.
it's really difficult to do it if I say like, yeah, I'm here for the art, or and listen, I'm not telling you like I'm bashing you or whatever, because I can be. I mean,
Pedro, you ass.
Well,
English is my second language, sir. I have to
I'm just messing
apologize
with you,
here.
buddy. Come on.
Yeah, no, but there's like, I think it's part of the of our repertoire from now on. That as artists, we just have to be out there, and we're bound to piss somebody off.
yeah.
That's inevitable,
Yep.
Mm.
and just I don't give into drama. Like, dude, like I've been like, you're part of Twitter. You're gonna get drama. People start calling me any kind of names, and it's like, wow, I guess you know me really well, and that's it. I leave it
Yep.
there. Is
And
why engage?
that's the attitude though that I
Yeah.
think I'm describing.
Mhm.
Because it's like people like me need people like you guys because I otherwise, like you're saying, I wouldn't put my face and name out there if I
Mm.
didn't think there was a place that would receive it.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, like, why will there be competition for YouTube? It's because they don't necessarily cater to the people like me that are looking for stuff like this, where I'd like to just have a conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the type of thing that I think the old YouTube era of starting drama
Hmm.
to get to a place where people will listen to you, that's coming to an end. I
Yeah.
hope at least.
Mm.
Because I think, like you're saying, if somebody says some shit to you, you just okay, cool, move on. And
Exactly. Like.
yeah, there's no other way to be if you're actually trying to do something. Like if you're
Mhm.
actually
Right.
if you're actually working on something, you don't have time to do any of this stuff that you typically see people engage with. Because I see that stuff and I think this person must have nothing to work on.
Yeah.
Like that's my typical response to any drama baiting or piling on or any of that stuff is, wow, this guy's got nothing else going on.
Yeah, here on our channel, actually, we host both Indiegogo and Kickstarter people.
Mhm. Yeah.
This kind of that divide. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's a group of people that don't want to support Kickstarter, not even just for this latest blockchain thing, which I honestly don't understand. I haven't really looked into it,
Oh,
but
yeah, we can maybe get into that a little bit in a second, but go ahead.
Oh, awesome.
but
Yeah.
as far as like hosting somebody just or not hosting somebody just because they're on Kickstarter, I'm not a fan of that. If it's a project that is interesting and that needs a boost or is something or somebody that I think would make a good, somebody to talk to on the show that would be a good episode. That's sort of what I'm interested in. It's not if you're on Kick. If there's, we've had probably half of our guests have been from Kickstarter, the other half have been from Indiegogo. So
Mhm.
it's all love here.
Yeah.
We don't discriminate like that.
Well, on the I am aware a little bit of the cultural divide between the Indiegogo and Kickstarter side. I wasn't when I started the Indiegogo. Um,
Mm.
but I will say that, I early on when we were doing all the concepting for Neonseed, I was mainly working with a guy who goes by Redux Visions. He's got a YouTube channel called Paper Starship. He does a lot of like cultural, like
Content.
commentary type stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and I worked with another guy named AP Moore, who goes by Cool Slaw, and he makes like video edits, music videos, that kind of thing. And one of the things we knew we needed to put in Neon Seed was all the crypto and blockchain stuff.
Mm.
And so, like, if you pick up this lore book, a lot of the entries cover this system that gets put in place to manage all these domes. And it's very much modeled on the way that like the World Economic Forum,
Mm.
other places talk about the use of like central bank digital currencies and blockchain technology and crypto and stuff. And part of the reason why, we looked at it was because there's this push for trustless systems, essentially systems where using like contracts that have automated aspects to them, right? So like a great example would be I have a car insurance and it's a smart contract that's tied to a bunch of devices in my car. and I crash my car, and all those devices tell my insurance, my little contract, that I crashed my car, and they send all the data from all the little devices in my car, and it pays out my insurance because it already knows exactly what happened in the wreck. And so this idea that I don't have to trust an insurance company to pay me, I don't have to trust somebody else to have like this idea of creating a trustless system is very attractive to world leaders and to economic leaders. And we wrote this into the book because we're like, look, you're going to put domes over millions of people and tell them they have to live under this kind of new paradigm. You're going to need to offer them a trustless system where they'll go, oh, I don't have to trust the government. Cool. And we looked at real crypto to design this. We looked at Chainlink. We looked at Ethereum. You know, we did a ton of research, and I have to give credit where credit's due for Redux and Coolslaw for working on that. But like, we wrote this in there because that's another quality that anime seems to have, at least in the West, of this kind of like of being a replacement for speculative fiction. You know, guys like Harlan Ellison and all the sci-fi writers used to just write what they thought was going to happen, and that was a story. And then it happened, and these guys got called prophets 30 years later. So there was no way we could avoid talking about blockchain when nobody can avoid it now. And I just said, fuck it, write it into the book. And that's, you know, when you meet Gene, that is his job. His job is basically to manage people who don't want their information on chain. Like if you are doing something criminal, you might talk to a negotiator, and he will store the information you need stored on his own personal network of himself, and it will never pass on to the blockchain, so the system will never know about it. And it's, you know, part of that comes from these conversations we're having now of like, oh, should Kickstarter adopt NFTs? That seems innocuous, but 30 years from now, you know, when your mortgage is an NFT or your you know, any sort of contract is on the blockchain, we'll be looking back at these conversations being like, damn, that was stupid. We should have been paying attention.
Shoulda, woulda, coulda,
And I'm not saying it's bad either. That's the thing. Like, I'm pretty ambivalent on the whole thing. I just know for a fact that, like, when I was writing this, my thought was, well, who's going to have the first mover's advantage and who's going to benefit the most? And it's always going to be whoever is at the top of the food chain, wherever you are.
Whoever holds the information, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Be the top,
Exactly.
So let me hop in here real quick, because it's kind of a nice little segue into some of the other characters, because we talked about Gene here, but we really haven't covered. I'm not sure if these are the same person. It sort of looks like it might be, but could you maybe go over the cast?
I'll give a whole rundown of the kind of ensemble, because it is sort of a tight cast. But we are mainly focused on Gene for like the most of it, and it's, you know, a sort of, you know, noir setup where you're following your detective character around, and a young woman comes to him, and that's Miss Holly Lejeune. She's the smoking the cigarette drawing girl up top. And you know, we set the whole thing in Brazil, and we imagined that, you know, everything would be pretty multicultural anyway by the time this is set, which is 2080. And so, you know, Holly is from North Africa and ended up living in, you know, the Parisian Dome as a refugee, and becomes a, you know, fashion designer because she has a material skill. She can actually make clothing, which is just something that people don't really know how to do with their hands anymore. You know, there are a couple of characters in around Gene who are like, you know, you can call them sidekicks. One of them is this young girl named Rat, who kind of runs a de facto orphanage, even though it's really just, she's, you know, there's a bunch of kids who don't have parents and they need something to do, so she's offered them something to do. And these characters are essentially start, you know, like any good noir, they start very far apart, and then they wrap together and entwine, and they have different motivations about doing things, and they keep secrets and whatnot. The big thing I can't really touch on with some of these characters, like the next picture to the left, you know, I can give names. I can essentially say, you know, there's some stuff going on with this that maybe is a little outside of the world as we present it in the beginning. But there are bad characters. There's some
You can say a
real
name,
creepy
and he's a
characters.
dude. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you'll meet, our big bad is this character Nitocris, who uh you know I really don't want to give too much away. It's
Yeah,
tough
you
to
don't
talk
have
about,
to.
but I
Yeah.
will I will touch on one of my favorite characters just to give like an interesting little tidbit here. But
Mm.
we included a character the only character in this that's a real person,
Oh,
which is King Nebuchadnezzar II. And I'm not gonna,
nice.
if you know Nebuchadnezzar, you understand Nebuchadnezzar has ties to many, many things, um,
Hmm.
you know, besides Babylon. If you're a Christian, you know the Book of Daniel.
Yeah.
If you're not, you probably know some Assyrian history and Babylonian history. But this story is very expansive, and even though it is set in a very specific window of time, we do sort of we do that anime thing where there's hundreds of years of stuff in play here, and I kind of do want to keep it a mystery. If you want to know more, all I can say, this is the best thing to do. I'll sell. Here you go. Here's your business, man. Pick up the art book. The art book will be out at the end of February, and like, if that's the thing, if you're into this story and you see how ambitious it is, and you want to know
Mhm.
more, that's why we made that art and lore book, because we know you're going to be waiting a year. We know that you're going to want to. I'm probably going to be on other shows and probably be saying similar things and not giving you enough. But
Hmm.
if you back the project, the art book is free. So even at $5, you will get a digital copy of the art book. So if you're looking to pick up the art book, I would say back the project rather than pre-order it right
Mhm.
now. But if you miss the window on the Indiegogo, the art book will wet your whistle.
Very nice.
And we're all about getting our whistles wet. So,
Oh, say
Yeah,
say hello
yeah.
to the chat real quick, because I think I
yeah.
actually recognize.
Oh yeah,
This is probably Harlem right here.
yeah. That's Harlem right there.
Thank you,
Hey.
Harlem, for coming by, buddy.
Yeah, Harlem's really the ideas man. Like, I know I've written about this. I think it's on the site, but all this came out of a nightmare he had at the height of the pandemic, which,
Mm.
um basically that character you see up there with the tail and the scythe, she, was the first that's the first character we put down on paper for this. And it, was between Nelson and Harlem, basically just trying to do like a police sketch of this woman that he had
Mm.
seen in a dream. And Harlem is a very, very interesting person. He's kind of all over the internet like myself. He's got his fingers in a lot of things, but he's a very private person.
Hmm.
Odds are you'll probably never get a chance to talk to him, so I'm surprised to see him here today.
Harlem, come on the show.
Harlan. Oh,
You
it's
don't
an
have to show
honor to
your
have you, Harlan.
face.
Yeah.
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 And dude, he's why it's set in Brazil. He's
Mm.
why, we're gonna do multiple language versions. Like, we're working on a Portuguese. This is what sucks. This is what's crazy to me. We need to do a Portuguese version, but the Portuguese that Harlem speaks is different from the Portuguese that
From
Nelson
Portugal.
speaks. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Mhm.
Portuguese is radically different from Brazilian Portuguese, I
Mhm.
guess. But
Yeah, I don't know. I have family. I have family in Sao Paulo and Recife, and yeah, that's more musical.
that's where it's set. It's set in Sao Paulo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the thing is, like, when you hear Portuguese from Portugal, to me it sounds like German. When
that
I heard
makes
it the first time, I was like, "Huh?"
that makes
And
sense.
yeah, I was missing like the samba though.
Yeah, well, because Harlem speaks German, and I assume he speaks German because it's so close.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Which is,
Very cool.
I didn't even touch on that, but one of the reasons why we're a year out is because we have language barriers going in every direction.
Oh yeah, yeah. That can get in the way.
Yeah.
So how did you guys meet then? That's, maybe we can
Oh
kind of wrap
shit.
up the show with how did the team get together? It's a big
So
international team. Yeah.
the new additions are Redux, who I can't recommend enough. Like, if you're looking for a YouTube channel, Paper Starship, like, we picked him up because he was a Kojima guy. He had
Awesome.
put out this video about MGS2, and I think it got like 500,000 views, and he just, his channel kind of blew up from that. But the core group was me and Cool Slaw and Harlem, and then a few other people we've kind of lost along the way. And we used to do these we did a podcast for a little bit for a Metal Gear community.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and then we put out these documentaries, like two big like research documentaries. Like we started in video editing and research and stuff like that more than because we didn't have Nelson, you know, we didn't have a artist yet.
Mm.
So Redux and Nelson kind of came on after they had seen these videos we had done. And they're on my channel. There, if you go on YouTube for Max Said, there's re-uploads there that are just like sitting there. Nobody even knows they're there. But the first one was like this exploration of Japanese arcade games and early Japanese game companies through the lens of, I don't know if you're familiar with Ikaruga, the shoot 'em up game. No, it's like
No,
it's
no.
like Xevious
Okay,
or Gradius, one of those games. You know, you fly a spaceship and shoot stuff that comes from
okay.
the top of the screen. Um, so we sort of did like a thing about the economics of Japan and where video games and stuff had come out of. And then I had done a hour-long documentary that was about Death Stranding and Peruvian eschatology and Egyptian eschatology and
Mm.
Buddhism. So like
Oh, nice.
this is why I'm the writer. Like I was the one who was sort of writing the scripts for those. I was doing the narration for those. And we came to a point where we were done with that stuff and we were looking for another project. And then you know, like I said, Nelson had seen our videos. He's a Metal Gear fan, Kojima fan, and we had met him in a mutual Discord, and Harlem had just asked him to draw this character, and it was kind of like it took a long time before we decided we were really going to make anything out of this. It took a lot of trust building too. Like I had some screenplays that I sent to Nelson, and you know, he read through them and he was like, okay, this guy can actually write. Like this guy isn't a hack. Not
Yeah,
wasting my time. And then
yeah.
he turned
That's
in
very
some.
important, man.
Well, I mean, you know, you think about drawing and writing, and they're the only art
Mm.
forms where your material is your brain and maybe a piece of paper and a pencil.
Hmm.
And like if I'm sculpting, I have to have clay. If I'm making a video, I have to have a camera and an editor. But like for writing, there's almost no set structure. There's almost
Yeah.
no.
Sorry about the roosters, man.
Oh, you're good, dude.
I live in a
It's
farm.
totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like we were moving into this space of like we have this idea, we have these characters now. Um, you know, we have world building starting to happen, and we were kind of looking at we were looking at what we had, and we were like, what can we even make out of this? And early on, we wanted to do a game. We wanted to do a like a STG, like a vertical
Hmm.
scrolling your
Oh,
thing.
awesome.
And
Yeah.
we are sort of like I don't want to speak too much about that, but that's sort of like what Harlem's direction is now.
Mm.
Harlem is kind of recruiting programmers and looking for more animators, and you know the next there you go. The next thing we might do honestly is one of those kinds of games. We
Okay.
may
Awesome.
not do another comic only because of how long this is going to take anyway. Um, but yeah, we really met through Hideo Kojima. Like you know, as weird as that might be, if there's a
Mm.
common thread among everybody in the group, it's like we all got MGS2. We all knew it would come. We all knew it would come true. We all knew social media would become bubbles and everybody would be isolated and hate each other. And we were sort of these five guys who just were existing, making our own shit. Like everybody had their own thing prior, and you know, now we're here and now we're stuck together. We're basically all kind of married and in the trenches together for another year. But
Dude, but that's awesome,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
The project looks awesome, and guys, if you can spread the word, dude.
Yes,
Neonseed.
definitely. Definitely spread the word. Hold on there. We'll wait for the plane to pass.
Yeah.
Definitely spread the word, guys. I was telling Pedro backstage before you showed up, Max, just looking over the project and the scope of what you guys are doing, you can definitely see the ambition is just all over the project. Um, yeah, there's a lot going on, and I definitely dig the art. And I mean, you guys, you've put in the work. It's I think that's sort of what Pedro had mentioned earlier. It's I don't want to say it's a shame because you guys have so much going on, but I mean, I really would have loved to have seen this thing blow the roof off it. You know what I mean? Like all the work you
Yeah,
guys put in. But I mean,
of course I would have too, but we're incredibly proud, and it's the type of thing where if we sold a single book, like we'd deliver that book and still be just as proud. But you know, it's been awesome, like just to talk to you guys and to get a little bit more connected into this space. And I really, really do appreciate you reaching out, not just for the attention, but like this was a great time. Like
Oh,
you two are
awesome,
really
man.
great at what you're doing here,
yeah,
and
bro.
keep that
Thank
up.
you.
Yeah,
Thank you, man. Thank you.
yeah.
I mean, it's our pleasure. I mean, and with projects that look like this, it's really hard not to have a nice conversation. I mean, as I said, like it raises, just looking at it, it raises a lot of questions. And that's one of the things, like what would hint at quality is like if you look at something and you're asking yourself questions, that means the project is doing something. So
Yeah.
yeah, dude, you just need to get the word out, and hopefully you can fund in the next 17 days. I mean, if you don't fund with this, like dude, you can make the campaign again. Maybe redesign,
We
move things around, and do.
Like I said, we very likely will do a campaign for an omnibus.
Mm-hmm.
And then in regard to the art book, like I'm sending people review copies. I think I'm giving away like 5 copies after it releases on my Twitter.
Very nice.
And so like I'll be around all year selling this, and then
Awesome.
probably for another year selling it once it's out. But
That's yeah, absolutely, bro.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And we have all your links in the description, so you guys definitely make sure you hit that up. Follow Max on Twitter, get you an art book. He put it up on the screen earlier. It's I mean, you've already got is that so that's the
This is a proof copy they sent me, yeah. But
very nice, dude.
it'll
Looks
be in
great.
paperback and hardback, 7 by 10, and like I said, it's split, so
Mm.
you'll get all the concept work I thought was worth putting in, and
Mhm.
you'll get about 40 or 50 pages of just straight lore that you
Hell
can
yeah.
read through. But yeah,
Awesome.
Okay, guys. So Max, if you do you have anything else you wanna throw out there, buddy, before we
nah,
end the show?
man, just thank you very much, and check out all the links, back the campaign if you find it interesting, and have a good one. Have a happy new year, everybody.
All right.
Awesome.
So Max, I'm gonna bump you to the back real quick, buddy. Then
Yeah.
we'll end the show. We usually chat for like another 10 minutes or so if you have the time.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I'll
then
be back there.
alrighty. Okay. Rex Doom in the house. Thank you, sir. Passing that along. Yep, definitely go ahead and back it, guys. Don't be shy. And actually, we didn't really go over the pricing structure, but you can get oh Jesus, let me dox myself. You
Oh
can
my
get
god.
you can do if I click this. Okay, there we go. You can get both books, the digital actual book and the art book for just $5. So I mean, you're really not losing anything here, and you're
Yep.
getting a whole 2 books for it. So definitely check that out. Rex, thanks for coming by. Shadowhawk, always good to see you. Harlem, we would love to talk with you if you want to come on sometime.
Yeah,
We're
dude.
really interested in your project, bro.
Mm.
Let's see, who else do we have? Just Dan, Past Master Dan, the OG. What's up, sir?
OG.
Alrighty. You messed everything up, Ginge. Fuck. Damn it. All right, guys. Well, that'll be it for the show then. Catch us next week. We have Chris Fisk for Infinitale. Definitely looking
Yep.
forward to that one. Another big RPG epic kind of deal. So lots of storytelling going on, guys. Love to see it.
Yeah.
Happy New Year, and we will catch y'all next